Hello and a very warm welcome to you to DW World Economic Forum's debate, coming to you from Malaysia. I'm pleased to welcome Yin Sin. She is a young global leader designated by the World Economic Forum. From the Asian Development Bank, we have Steve Groff. Now, he's the Vice President, Southeast Asia and the Pacific. It's a great pleasure to have Anne-Birgitte Albrechtsen. She is one of the co-chairs of the World Economic. From Indonesia, we have Nadiem Makarim. He's the CEO and founder of GO-JEK. And also from Indonesia, I'm very pleased to welcome former Finance Minister Muhammad Khatib Basri. I want to first know about your story, how you started with this enterprise, because I've heard that you actually, like many startups, you were sitting in Harvard with a bunch of buddies and you came up with this idea. Is that a myth or is it true?
It's semi-true, yeah. It was during that period in business school that I solidified the idea, and it required a whole bunch of people to bounce around, but it's been something on the back of my head for some time. That I've wanted to do, because I was an avid GO-JEK user during my consulting days, and I just saw this massive group of informal sector workers who were completely undervalued by society and who could actually be doing some of the most high-value economic activity, but there was this issue of trust and intermediaries. And I think that goes to my point about, for me, what I've seen, inequality, the biggest driver of inequality in my mind from what I've seen in Indonesia is the inability to establish trust between a variety. So there's a huge economic cost to lack of trust. That's the first. The second thing is there's a huge because of the lack of trust or lack of access, there's a huge economic cost and structural inequality created by layering. Before GO-JEK came, these drivers were stuck to a particular location that were not able to balance demand and supply, having to pay a fee to whoever was the leader of that little area. Before GoFood, people were stuck with having to have enough capital to have a place to build a restaurant in a mall or in a place with high traffic, instead of just cooking in their own kitchen. A variety of technology players in Indonesia right now are doing the same thing in e-commerce, giving direct access, all right? And what's happening is that I think the analogy that's very good to use is in organizational inefficiency as well. When you have like an organization that looks like a pyramid with multiple layers, nothing gets done very quickly. But as soon as you kind of flatten out the org this way, things really speed up. You're able to leverage every single point of economic asset, productivity, people, whatever you call it, any asset. And I think that, to me, poverty and structural inequality is that asymmetry of access. And I do fundamentally believe that outside of policy, the other big push that could even achieve scale, maybe at a faster rate, is actually technology. It's actually technology, because I'm biased, obviously, but I've seen it firsthand how a company, a motorcycle taxi company, in 3 years could become the largest employer in Indonesian history, indirect employer in Indonesian history. That's just huge. One story. There are many, many other stories that are going on like this that shows that, with the smartphone revolution, your ability to then level the playing field for people to access each other, build trust, and delayer entire economic verticals is extremely powerful.
So you wanted to say something?
No,
I think we also need to focus on what we can do to overcome this inequality divide that is between the haves and the have-nots. And will Nadiem's enterprise be an example that we can have more kind of entrepreneurial companies and things and startups which come up, which focus not just on profitability but also on social inclusion?
Okay.
Does that
May I comment on that? For me, if every single person, even below the poverty barrier, has a smartphone, which is not actually improbable. It's actually quite possible in the next 3-4 years, when as soon as an Android smartphone gets to about, I would say $15-20, which is not so far from now, this should be achievable. I can tell you that the profit motive of serving the bottom of the pyramid, due to its inherent scalability, will be sufficient in providing most of the immediate needs of the poor itself. Now, this is a very contentious point. A lot of people disagree with me on this, but it requires a huge amount of government intervention. And yes, all of that to build human capacity, education and health cannot. This cannot be solved privately. However, for other issues such as structural access to cheaper products, structural access to financial inclusion, structural access to credit. Without credit, there is no ability to then take risk to move up to your next level of economic development. As we all know, you need some access to credit. So in my mind, what will private sector companies try to acquire or sell to the bottom of the pyramid? It's what they need most. What they need most is actually access to information and access to financial services. These are the critical things that people in the poverty line or slightly above the poverty line really need. The third thing they really need is jobs. Not just because of unemployment issue, but because of underemployment issues. These three things with the gig economy is one of the most powerful ways of driving employment, financial services, and information is a smartphone, actually. All three in one. So I think we are severely undervaluing, and also governments, I think, are undervaluing the benefit of spreading smartphones. Some people go all the way and extend it to a very high concept of digital literacy, all this stuff. Actually, to be very honest, at the bottom, the basic line to me is giving everyone a smartphone. Once that is, the market itself will address all the needs, because to be honest, there's also this myth that the poor or the bottom of the pyramid do not have money to spend. And this is an erroneous point. Of course, they spend all their money on a month-to-month basis, and they actually have a capital to spend as long as those services can meet their needs.
Yancy, do you agree with that?
Yes and no, because of course there are lots of...
How does one actually, can your company serve as a blueprint for people, drawing people in? How do you see this going further? We need to go beyond kind of traditional structures. We need to think beyond the envelope. And where do we go from here?
It's a big question.
Big question. but I want to go on your own experience and see how does that...
I think that... So there's two things. There's the short-term or the medium-term impact, which is a combination of government policy as well as technology deregulation to enable that. Obviously, with the large exception of consumer lending, which is quite dangerous if you let it go rampant on its own, exactly like you said, there should be some checks and balances there. That's the kind of medium-term things that can have impact within 2, 3, 4 years. But you'll always end up in the same cycle again if you don't address the biggest kind of lever for future inequality reduction initiatives, which is education. There's no way around. You can't hack your way around it. At the end of the day, you're gonna need to give the largest amount of knowledge and opportunity for the younger generation to be able to be either self-employed, get a job, or become part of the creative economy. So if you don't establish that, then there will be no SMEs, right? The health of that is really bad. So for example, in GoFood, our food delivery, 80% of our transactions comes from mom and pop shops, not the large franchise retail, etc. And may I add, also the vast majority of the new first-time entrepreneurs are women, actually. Because guess why? Because they get to take care of their kid and start a business at home at the same time.
But they have less access to capital.
Yes, but now that their transactions are all tied up in a digital content, banks and all kinds of financial institutions are now gunning for them to be able to provide financial services because it wasn't cash. So therein lies kind of the key gateway to financial inclusion is also the elimination of cash so that you have information, you have transactional data to be able to assess that. But I think in whatever you do today for the existing adult working population can only do so much to solve inequality. gender inequality, economic inequality, opportunity inequality, that all needs to be addressed in somehow transforming the educational system today. Because it'll be too late if we don't attack this, especially given the massive demographic boom that is actually being experienced. So the demographic boom can go both ways. It can go as a bonus if you get the education right today, or it could be a massive both political and social risk if it creates even a higher inequality. Because the most unhappy person is a college graduate who comes out and can't find opportunity. That is when countries begin to destabilize. And so I think I'm torn between the medium-term ones and the real long-term educational initiatives that are no short of a Herculean task, because you've got to transform the education system. Evolving it will not do today. You have to really transform it.
There seems to be a general consensus. Okay, raise your hands, anyone? Anyone has a question?